Let's check out Ryzen AI in the Razer Blade 14. Hey Internet, Gordon Young with PC World. In front of me I have the brand new Razer Blade 14 with AMD's brand new Ryzen 9 7940HS. Its main claim to fame, of course, it is the Phoenix CPU, which is the first one with a dedicated AI accelerator in the CPU itself. The laptop also, of course, has NVIDIA's GeForce RTX 4070 laptop GPU in it. Unfortunately, though, as you know, the brave new world of AI, there aren't a lot of really relatable benchmarks for consumers, especially benchmarks that run on all the new hardware. So we're going to look at a very practical use of Ryzen AI in the Razer Blade 14. It is also the first CPU with support for Microsoft's new Windows Studio Effects. That's basically the effects that do background blur, also will do the eye stuff to move it around for video conferencing. In fact, it works out of the box with it. I'm going to show you. We can turn it on immediately by clicking on Studio Effects, and we can see our camera here. Now I can turn on background effects, I can turn on eye contact and auto framing. So we are not going to really be running your typical Cinebench for benchmarks, but we are going to be seeing the practical impacts of this. So let's go ahead and look at background blur first. There's three ways we can do this on the laptop. First, we're going to start with Studio Effects using the Ryzen AI. I'm going to turn on the background blur. As you can see, it's all gone blurry, but to me, that's not very realistic because you're not going to be doing that without zoom. So let's fire zoom up. Okay, so right now we're looking at the Windows Studio Effects using the Ryzen AI and the Ryzen 9 7940. It's basically using the Xilinx AI processor that AMD got into the CPU, the Phoenix CPU, and we're seeing it's doing a pretty decent job. Background is blurry. You're not going to see the clutter in the room behind me. Let's put my hands up. Typically, am I gonna? No? Okay. Looks like it's doing a pretty good job. Fingertips are a little blurry. I wish I had a headset because that's actually another tell I want to do, see how it does a headset.
Oh, let's grab one.
Let me grab a headset. So another good tell for a really good background blur is when you're wearing a headset. This is just a pair of raggedy old ones. I would say it's not bad. I mean, it is getting a little blurry around the band. So that is, but what I do like is I do see when I do Zoom calls using the CPU based stuff, typically it actually doesn't blur what's behind me. So I don't mind that it's actually blurring a little bit of the band a little bit. My face is the important thing. You can still see that I have a headset on, but I would say that's not bad at all, right? For quality. Okay, so we got the feel for it here. Let's actually check out broadcast. I'm going to turn off the camera here. I'm actually going in to turn off my Studio Effects. It should be off. It should be on. Now we're going to turn it off. So we now have no background blur. I'm going to go into broadcast. Because remember, this laptop has the GeForce RTX 4070 laptop GPU in there. We are going to, that's off. Speaker stuff is off. We're only looking at the camera. So let's actually integrate a camera and let's turn on background. So now we have the NVIDIA background blur on. It's set to quality. Strength is set to the default. Eye contact is off. Now let's go ahead and switch zoom on to broadcast and turn it on. So now we're looking at NVIDIA broadcast. It's definitely much sharper. As you could see earlier, remember the bands were very, very blurry on in the Windows Studio Effects. But the good thing to me, again, the main thing is, although, nice, it's actually separating my hand. But typically, you could see what's behind you in the room in the band, and the zoom one would not work so well. So for quality, I definitely give it to NVIDIA Broadcast, although look at this wire. This wire is being lost here. Is it a way to, no? So it's blurring that wire, but it is focusing on me. All right, so let's actually turn this off again. I'm gonna go back into NVIDIA Broadcast. We're gonna turn off background blur. And then I'm actually gonna go back to the integrated camera, turn that on. So again, we can see the background. It's blown out because it's brighter behind us, but now let's turn on the default blur background. As I understand it, this probably should use CPU-based, possibly even integrated graphics, but probably CPU-based background blur. So as you can see, definitely not as good. You can see the headset was, oh, okay, no, there it goes. The blurring is definitely not as good as, certainly not as good as NVIDIA Broadcast. I would say it's not as good as Windows Studio Effects because you can see, typically what happens on Zoom calls is things that get kind of near your head get blurry, and you can see the headband for the headset gets really blurry, and you get this weird halo effect. You can see through to the other side of the room typically, right? Because you can see the tile up in the roof. It is on the ceiling, it is blown out, but you can see through that. It's not actually blurring in between the band, which if you wear a headset is going to bug you. If you're a bald person like me with no headset, it's not a problem, but definitely of the three for image quality, definitely the built-in blur in Zoom is not as good. Now we're actually going to look at the power cost for this because for a lot of people who are plugged in, no big deal, but most people with a laptop this light, you want to go outside. My wife does it all the time. She goes on the deck to take Zoom calls. You want the battery to last as long as you can. The laptop may not be fully charged up, so we're actually going to see the impact. So I am actually going to first fire up the NVIDIA. No, let's start off again. Let's turn on Studio Effects. We're going to turn on background blur. And right now I'm plugged in. You can see I'm plugged in, but I want to know what the impact is on the battery. And I'm going to do that by basically starting up Battery Mon. This is monitoring the discharge rate of the battery. You can see we're not quite fully charged. This laptop has a 70 watt-hour battery, but we're in pretty good shape here. So I'm going to unplug this and we will see the immediate impact. So again, we're still doing our background blur using the Ryzen AI in the Ryzen 9 7940HS. It should settle down here in a little bit. There we go. So we're settled down to about 15 watts, 16 watts. And generally, it will even get better. Let's see if I can move that. And there we go. So about 16 watts. I've actually seen it as low as 13.5 to 14 watts once it settles down. So let's actually let Battery Mon run. I'm actually going to switch off Studio Effects. So our blur is off now. I'm actually going to stop the camera. We're going to go back into broadcast. I'm going to turn on background blur. There we go. You can see background blur is on. I'm going to switch it to NVIDIA. And then now let's turn on the camera. It'll take a little second to snap on here. We're still recording it, but I mean, the quality is amazing. NVIDIA Broadcast is much better than the other two, and it looks wonderful to me. But the cost is in battery performance. Because look, we are consuming 35,000 milliwatts or 35 watts. That is basically almost 3 times as much power as using the built-in Ryzen AI and the Ryzen 9 7940HS. And that's a significant difference because if you're talking about one of those epic Zoom calls that never ends for work, you're going to have a hard time doing it with NVIDIA Broadcast on the entire time unless the battery is topped off or you can run to an outlet because it's just going to eat a lot more power because you are firing up a GPU. Looks like most of the GPU is fired up. You're also going to be firing up the RAM. So it's just a severe power cost anytime you fire up the discrete GPU in a laptop. And 35 watt hours is a significant, 35 watts is a significant impact on battery life. Okay, let's actually switch this off now. The last thing we're going to look at for power consumption is the built-in zoom. So now we basically have the zoom default blur, mostly CPU based. And let's let it settle down a little bit. Earlier we were using about 14.5, 15 watts maybe, usually about 14.5, as low as 13 watts with the Ryzen. So now we're doing essentially all CPU based background blur. And actually we're consuming, I'm going to give it another few seconds to settle down. So it's actually using a little more power, not a huge amount because you're looking at maybe 15, 16 watts. But it looks like you actually are getting better savings. You know, it looks like the Zoom blur is about 16, 15.5 watts. So actually consuming more power than using the Ryzen AI with Windows Studio Effects because again, you have a dedicated AI processor doing that background blur. All right, we are done with the background blur. Let's do what's really cool, and that is what I privately call the crazy eyes. Is actually called eye contact. If you don't know what this is, This is where the video call conference, as we know, your webcam is on top. You're staring at the screen. Honestly, you're probably watching YouTube and not listening to your boss. Your boss knows you're not paying attention. It bugs some people when you're not staring at the screen. Your boss wants your full attention on the screen. So NVIDIA Broadcast does this really cool feature. We're going to turn on eye contact in NVIDIA Broadcast. It is still a beta feature, but it does the really cool effect. It's the first one we're going to start with NVIDIA because they were the first ones to start here. Give it a second, crank up, and as you can see, I am staring at the webcam. My boss is talking about mission statements. I don't care, they're just droning on. And it looks like I'm paying attention the entire time. I'm not at all. I'm looking at my phone. I'm actually watching YouTube videos down here. I'm reading other stuff. I'm reading the news. But because of the NVIDIA eye contact, it looks like I am paying attention to it, right? I will say my eyes are not anime big like this. I don't remember my eyes being anime big like this. Are my eyes this big, Adam? Because they look much larger, right?
You look so beautiful.
They look beautiful. It really looks like your boss is like, wow, Gordon is really paying attention to me. Attaboy for paying attention. I'm not, but because I have NVIDIA Broadcast off, it looks like I'm paying attention. I'm not even looking, I'm looking down on the screen. And some people say NVIDIA Broadcast is a little heavy-handed because I'm actually looking down here, but it looks like I am looking at the camera and my eyes look a little fake, right? So it depends. So that is NVIDIA Broadcast eye contact. I think it's a great feature. I use it because I don't like paying attention to the meetings, and I think people think I'm now paying attention to them now. And now let's actually do it. Now, there is no feature parity on that in Zoom itself. The only other one that is in there is in Windows Studio Effects. Let's get in here, turn this on. I'm going to go to Studio Effects. I'm going to turn on eye contact on standard. There is only one option for that, and it is on. Now, earlier, you were watching it in NVIDIA Broadcast with eye contact. The eyes were very locked on there, and I am actually now staring at my mouth on this screen. And this effect is so subtle, this Windows Studio effect. It is Microsoft's work. We weren't even sure if it was working at first, right, Adam? We were kind of like messing around, like, is this thing even working? Because eye contact sort of locks your eyeballs in for most of the time. You can really look off the screen. You can do a lot of screwing around with NVIDIA Broadcast and eye contact. This one actually forces you to pay a little closer attention to the webcam. And I wasn't actually sure if it was even working, but let me switch it off. We're going to see if we can show you what is going on here, because it is very different. I'm going to continue to stare here. I'm staring at my mouth, and I just turned it off. So I'm going to turn it back on. It's really hard to tell. Actually, it's a little hard to tell.
Yeah, that's hard to tell.
So I'm actually going to do this in camera, because we can actually flip it on and off. So this is a built-in camera application for Windows 11. It actually, if you have a Ryzen CPU with Ryzen AI, it actually gives you this little secret thing. If you're running an Intel CPU, forget about it. That Raptor Lake is not going to give you this option. You have to have Ryzen AI. You can do your framing, you can do your eye contact, you can do your background, but look, we're doing it directly in this application. So check this out. I'm actually going to stare, well, I'm going to stare right here at my finger so you know with a point of reference. And I'm going to click it. Is it working?
No.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there it is.
So I'm clicking it back and forth. My eyes are still locked on my fingertip, but check out my eyes, right? They are. So
it's like it's just moving your eyes.
Okay, I'm going to lock on here. I had to stare away. I had to move my eyes at the toggle, but let's keep looking. So I'm toggling on and off. My eyeballs are not. Let's make sure it's not my glasses here, folks. So I'm now eyeballs not moving, locked on my fingertip. Can you see that?
Oh, barely.
And does it strong? Let's see if it's more pronounced if I do it up here. So if I'm going to stare here, it's
actually less pronounced.
Interesting. It's actually less pronounced with my glasses off. So let's do this again. Let's stare this. I'm going to click. Eyeballs locked. Is it on? Yeah. On, off, on, off.
It's definitely moving
on,
it.
Off. It's weird because my eyes are not moving. My eyebrows are now. I'm going to keep them open. We're going to go full attention. Like what? We're getting a bonus?
Oh, it's so subtle.
It's very, very
That's-
subtle.
You know, it feels like it's a completely different idea, where like broadcast is like redrawing new eyeballs, and Microsoft Studio Effects is like trying to take your eyeballs and move them into position. So it's more subtle, but it's not as effective. It's also less creepy though.
Yes, because I will say there are times when eye contact in NVIDIA broadcast gets really creepy, right? Because I do feel like it gives me those anime eyes. They're like, huh? Like Scooby-Doo? Like what?
Well,
So
what about battery though?
yeah, so let's check out the battery as well. So we're gonna go back. There we go. So we're back on broadcast with eye contact on. And to me, the big question is power costs. Let's let it settle down here, because we're typically when you're staring at a Zoom call for an hour, you don't really do much. So we're basically, again, 38 watts, 40 watts, 35 watts. And it does look like, depending on how much work is in the camera, so it does actually make a difference in the actual power consumption. But, it is a significant power cost at, 30 to 40 watts versus much less. You're just simply going to get less power. But the cool thing is, I'm paying attention to my boss the whole time, because it's like, Gordon looks like I'm not even staring at the screen. I'm staring down here, folks. But that's kind of the craziness of eye contact. It really does make you, everybody think like your boss thinks they're the best speaker in the world, because everybody's staring at everything they're doing. And I'm actually staring at myself, right? So cool stuff. So we're about 37 watts right now, right? And whoa, and actually, what is my eye doing there? Look at that. As it's doing crazy. Whoa!
Your eyes through the.
And yes,
the
there are times. Oh boy,
Oh.
fun with NVIDIA. Oh yeah. So as Adam was saying, it does. And what if I put my? Oh, you could do this to your coworkers. Like, I can't take this meeting anymore, folks. Or I'm taking my eyeball. So yes, that is the weirdness of NVIDIA broadcasts with eye contact sometimes. But the main thing is significant power costs, because you are firing up that RTX 4070 laptop GPU, the RAM on it, the big ass die on it. So we're actually going to turn this off. This is just too much fun. And we're going to turn on that very, very subtle Studio Effects eye contact. Here we go. So let's look at the power consumption. Let's let it settle down a bit. Remember the running NVIDIA broadcasts. Oh, actually, look at this. Oh, it does get a little weird with that cable, right? So that cable's over my eye.
Oh.
And you can see it reshapes it, but people might not notice. It does put a weird halo effect around the cable. But I'm currently staring at my eyes on the screen. So, I mean, it does look more natural, right? It does look like, I'm not like the other one. Remember, it looked like what's going on? This is
looks
definitely
like
more
your
natural.
actual eyes.
It looks like my actual eyes, and it looks more subtle, because let's try the pokey thing. So I'm gonna. Oh, see, look. Interesting. It really does it.
No.
No, watch my eyes shift though. I'm gonna try to keep them as steady as possible.
Oh, it's very subtle. Oh, it's so
But
subtle.
you see how the eyes are shifting.
Yeah, just a little bit.
But I mean, it's way more subtle and frankly more natural than eye contact in video broadcasts. Certainly not as locked on, but
What about power?
of course the big thing is power, and we're looking at about 16 watts, 16 and a half watts. And actually, I think if the camera out of here, if we back out of the camera a little bit, and there's less for it to process, is it going to get easier? So it's dropping a little bit, 16.2 watts. So, again, that is less than half of the power of NVIDIA broadcast. We're looking at about, now that the camera's completely out of it, dropped down to 15 watts. So it does depend on what is going on here, how much work it has to do as I get closer. So, we're gonna look at three things. For quality, we're gonna judge for blur. NVIDIA broadcast definitely gives you the best performance. It just simply looks better than the Windows Studio Effects with Ryzen AI in it, if you ask me. Although I would give Ryzen AI and Studio Effects a good second, because it did do better when you were wearing a headset. And it does especially better than Zoom, which really looks generally terrible with the blur. It just, the Zoom default blur, unless you have a shaved head and no headset on, generally doesn't do a great job. So I would say it's definitely a good second place on there. For power savings, significant power savings for Ryzen AI. We were looking at about 14.5 watts for blur versus 35, 38, 40 watts even with NVIDIA broadcast, and about a watt more for using the CPU-based zoom blur. And as we get to the eye contact mode, it was really only between a broadcast and studio effect. I think for quality, I'm really kind of torn. I'm really kind of torn because Windows Studio Effect with Ryzen AI is so subtle, you do wonder if it's even working. At the same time, it doesn't get crazy like NVIDIA broadcast. The eye contact there does look pretty good, and it does, whenever I use it a lot, it does tend to creep people out because they think like, what is going on? Like, why are his eyes so big? Why is he staring at me so much? And also, what's up with the eyeballs going through the frames? And it does do weird things as we saw there. So for quality, I'm really split, but I do like that NVIDIA broadcast just kind of tracks your eyes there. I like that. I do wish it wouldn't be quite as aggressive. Eye contact is maybe a little too subtle, so maybe they can crank that effect up a little more. Maybe NVIDIA could crank it down and we'll get closer, but very, very close. I think it's going to be subjective based on what you like. And then, of course, the most important thing is power, because, again, if you're sitting out on your deck doing a 2-hour Zoom call for work and you want to do eye contact, you're looking at less than half the power, well less than half the power with the eye contact with Ryzen AI, because you basically have a dedicated AI accelerator in the CPU itself. You're not cranking up that GeForce RTX 4070 laptop GPU, which we were seeing 38 watts. And if you went outside and your battery is only at half full, it's not going to make it, because that GPU is just going to eat up the rest of the power. So there are actually arguments for both.
Well, and just for reference, how much power is Zoom using without anything going?
Oh, so we have, let me see, do I have the, so we just have Zoom going. Let's turn off eye contact itself. So we have nothing going on now. We're going to go back. We're going to be looking at the power drain on Zoom. Nothing is going on, no effects, although you are still doing encode. Looks like it's all CPU encode probably. Hopefully some of that is on the dedicated media processor in the Ryzen CPU, but about 15.5 watts. So not bad. Not bad. So you can almost see that the Ryzen AI with Windows Studio Effects is almost like free blur, background blur and free eye contact without the power cost. So for power consumption, huge cost differential. Quality differences are not quite there, although some would argue the eye contact is better for the Windows Studio Effects. But this is pretty cool, because this is probably one of the only ways you're going to see the Ryzen AI processor used right now. Hopefully we'll get more benchmarks to see the performance of being able to run this on, say, the actual CPU cores, the actual Ryzen AI dedicated processor, as well as the integrated graphics core in the AMD CPU. And then, of course, on the Intel side, we have the same thing. You can run it on the Intel integrated graphics. You can also run on the Intel CPU, and of course you can also run it on AMD GPUs and NVIDIA GPUs. So the brave new future will be figuring out what gives you the best performance in the applications that you use in each of the dedicated processors. It's going to take a few years to settle this out, but I think this is pretty cool. If you want to see more content like this, come back to PC World's channel to see more Gordon Crazy Eye videos.